the point you made about the bittersweet. Look, uh, well-off people can deal with this type of a situation. They live at home. They have a ecosystem which is comfortable. But what it's been for the poor people, for migrants, it's completely devastating. They've lost confidence actually. काफी लोगों ने मुझे बोला कि बिल्कुल भरोसा खो गए हैं, भरोसा ही नहीं बचा. And that I think is a very sad thing and a dangerous thing for the country.
And I think right from the beginning, I mean, this is my view, whether it was in terms of how this problem was to be perceived. I don't understand why, despite being an Asian country, we sought not to look at what was happening east, but we looked at, at Italy and France and Spain and the UK and subsequently the US, which are really not the right benchmarks in any sense, whether it's by inherent immunity, temperature, demography, predisposition to thrombosis, etc. Everything that the scientists and doctors have spoken of. We should never have been looking there, even in terms of how to approach this from a medical point of view, starting with the bogey of medical infrastructure. We are all aware that there can be no medical infrastructure that can be adequate to combat something like this. But nobody was willing to explain the maths to us that we are so many people and if so many are vulnerable, 5% or whatever it is, this is what that number looks like and this is how we are preparing ourselves, or perhaps we cannot prepare ourselves. Maybe that's not a politically appropriate thing to say. But as Narayan Murthy always says, when in doubt, disclose. I think we have fallen very short of disclosing facts, logic, and the truth. And this has then got amplified and instilled such an enormous fear in people that people seem to think that the contagion is equal to a contagious cancer or something. And now to change the mind of people and bring them back on board and make them comfortable with the thought of quote unquote living with the virus, which seems to be the new narrative coming from government now. It's going to take a long time. So what do you feel? I mean, this is how I have seen it.
I was speaking to some experts and some specialists, and right in the early days of the lockdown, one of them told me, and which stuck in my mind, which he said that look, realize that the moment you apply a full lockdown, you're changing the nature of the disease. You're moving from a non-fatal disease to a fatal disease in the minds of people. And once you've done that, then to reverse that is going to take significant amount of time and it's going to take a lot of effort. And he also said that, look, don't view the lockdown as a on-off switch. It's not going to be an on-off switch. Because once you have moved into a lockdown, switching it off again, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be extremely complicated. I liked your point about we looked west and not east. Why do you think we looked west?
I guess, as some people say, it's the first time that something like this, as opposed to TB or pneumonia or diarrhea, something as simple as diarrhea that apparently kills 100,000 largely children in India. Here is something that struck in the heart of the developed world. And when the rich and famous get affected, it always makes a bigger headline. As someone said in the very early days of this problem, that 8,000 kids die of starvation in Africa every day. Who cares, beyond the point, in civil society. We are not even aware of this fact. So I think primarily the sensation was because affluent people in developed countries were vulnerable. And perhaps some people inferred कि अगर इनको ऐसा हो सकता है तो फिर हम तो कहाँ के नहीं रहे, this kind of feeling. And that is why I have often said to people that, to my mind as a layman, I saw from the beginning that there were 4 choices before us. At one extreme, on the left, if I may say so, is the choice of a hard lockdown, as you said, which implies a almost airtight, impervious lockdown. And to the best of my knowledge, this has not happened anywhere in the world. Because to physically constrain yourself to your home and see absolutely no one. On the other extreme, I would say is, business as usual. Um, just ignore it, carry on, jo hoga hoga type of thing. Nobody says this either. So everybody's trying to find a middle path, I think, between these two extremes. I think, unfortunately, India not only looked west, it went uh, to the wild west, I think, in the sense we stayed more towards the impervious side. We tried to implement a hard lockdown, but which was still porous. So I think we have ended up with the worst of both worlds. On the one hand, a porous virus makes sure that the porous lockdown makes sure that the virus will still exist. And as you said, it is still waiting to hit you when you unlock. So you have not solved that problem. But you have definitely decimated the economy. You flattened the wrong curve. It's not the infection curve, it's the GDP curve. This is what we have ended with, the worst of both worlds. In my view, what should have been done is something more right of center, which is the kind of stuff that we are hearing out of Japan and Sweden. Um, and people, when they hear about this in terms of being articulated as herd immunity, tend to think that herd immunity means, let the vulnerable die. It doesn't mean that at all. They're missing the details that whether it's in terms of sanitization, masks, distancing, Sweden, Japan, etc., are following all these practices, but they are not trying to go further into the unproductive zone, as you said, and make something that is relatively benign and manageable appear to be fatal and beyond control. So I think, unfortunately, we have a quasi hard lockdown, I would say, which has given us the worst of both worlds.